We got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, I don't want to fall off or trip. I want to remember to click when I'm supposed to click. And I wrote a script. Because if I don't write a script, I end up saying things that I might regret. It's the nature of who I am. All my life, I've used my voice to try and make change. All my life, I've surrounded myself with people who I emulate, who have used their voices too. And today I'm going to ask you to do the same. 3 words. Use your voice. Use your voice. Let me quote you from the voices of some 8th graders. Quote, "I need to burn all the skin that you touched. Will someone tell me what it will take for the pain to go away? I'm mad that he took your life. I wish I could unsee my mother being beat." These are the words spoken by 8th graders right here in Sioux Falls. These 8th graders made the difficult decision to use their voice. And they spoke some of the toughest words that any of us ever want to speak. I'm not sure how many of you have ever attended an 8th grade poetry slam in our middle schools here in Sioux Falls. Natalie, she and I were 2 of the judges for the 8th grade poetry slam at Whittier Middle School last year. I'm not sure why they picked me because I know nothing about poetry, but I was there. It was an amazing competition where 8th graders have the chance to pour their heart and soul into a short poem and recite it in front of their entire class. Even though I know a thing or two about these students, I wasn't prepared for what I heard. I know many of these students have tough lives, but damn, the trauma that is forced on some of our kids by the very circumstances they were born into is so unfair. Yet they're still expected to go on with their lives, go to school every day, have healthy relationships with their friends, and find a pathway to success. The trauma brings them down. We don't choose the family we're born into. We don't choose whether we're born into poverty or wealth. We don't choose if we're straight, gay, trans, or something else. We don't choose the color of our skin. We live in a world where many things that affect us every day and affect our futures are out of our control. But there's thousands of things that do affect us that we can make better. We don't have to live in a world where the poverty industry preys on poor people, creating a never-ending cycle of debt that ends in bankruptcy, theft, and sometimes suicide. We don't have to live in a world where women make less money than men while doing the same job, where women don't control their health care decisions. We don't have to live in a world where AK-47 and AR-15 assault rifles are available for sale down the street and put in the hands of deranged killers. Nor should we live in a world where George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others become household names, not because they chose that path, but because someone used excessive force prompted largely by racism and bigotry and took away their future. I could go on, but I think you get the point. Where you see a wrong, work to make it right. Where you see injustice, stand up. If you want to make a difference, use your voice. Like lots of kids, I grew up pretty shy. I was the youngest of 9 kids and pretty sheltered. I was naive and scared. I followed the teachings of the Catholic Church pretty closely and had a strong moral center. I treated people well, cared about others, and I didn't swear until I went to college. Now I swear too much. When I was 5 years old, my father was in a terrible construction accident. He laid in the hospital for 6 weeks until he finally passed. He left my mother with 9 kids, 7 who were still at home with her. We didn't have much. Dad didn't have health insurance, so the bills were extreme. We were thankful to the presentation sisters of the Catholic hospital who helped my mom with the bills. What we had was a mother who made the little money that we had go a long way. She made smart choices, and we had community. Other families in Mitchell were generous with giving us rides to events, sharing garden produce, and so much more. The best way to say it is we were poor, but we were okay. Part of my upbringing involved political conversations around the dinner table. There was a lot going on. The war in Vietnam, funding for higher education, abortion battles, support for the working poor, and so much more. We had a lot to talk about. In 1972, when I was just 10 years old, a great man from my hometown ran and won the Democratic nomination for president. George McGovern fought for families like mine. He used his powerful voice in the U.S. Senate to adopt critical food policies like free and reduced lunch for those in need. He used his powerful voice to stand up to the policies of the Nixon administration when he saw thousands and thousands of Americans killed in Vietnam. He fought for and won health care and higher education benefits for men and women serving in the military. He talked about greenhouse gases and the warming of the earth long before most any of us knew anything about climate change. He lost that campaign in a landslide against Richard Nixon, and Nixon resigned shortly after in the shame of the Watergate scandal. In 1980, when McGovern was running for re-election to the Senate, he was the #1 target of national conservatives. He was pummeled with attack ads that painted him as a communist, a baby killer, and the enemy of South Dakota farmers. I tell you about George McGovern because no one has shaped my life more than he did. In his later years, we became close friends. I was there when he took his last breath, and I spoke at his memorial service. When McGovern lost that race in 1980, I was just a freshman in college. I vowed that night that I would use my voice the way he did to somehow make a difference in the lives of people who needed a strong voice. Today I stand before you to say that I've never been silenced. I've taken on university leaders, U.S. senators, former Democratic presidents, big corporations and tobacco companies, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and one of the most corrupt players of all, the payday lending industry. They prey on poor people. They're a sick, destructive, and dangerous industry, ruining the lives of people who are poor by charging them 578% interest on loans they're taking out and forcing their families into a cycle of debt. These creeps use mafia-like tactics, attempting to destroy my business, target me personally, and forcing me to give up. I'd never been so scared in all my years. My partner was scared for my life and wanted me to stop. If I had been silenced, low-income families in South Dakota today would still be ruined by the greed of these lenders, and I couldn't let that happen. I knew that by using my voice, I could make a difference, and I couldn't give up. In November of 2016, with the overwhelming support, I get very emotional when I talk about this. With the overwhelming support of South Dakota voters, we put the payday lenders out of business for good. It was the proudest moment of my life. Thank you. 5 years ago, after a lot of hard conversations, I knew I had to do something to address the high rates of poverty in the Sioux Falls School District. 47% of kids in our school district live in poverty. 47%. You look around Sioux Falls, you got a beautiful community, got a lot of great things going on. We've also got a lot of people who are hurting, people who need our help. 47% of kids in our school district live in poverty. Our neighbors in Brandon, 6%. Gives you some perspective. In some of these elementary schools like Lowell, Hawthorne, Terry Redland, 100% of the students in those schools qualify for federal poverty assistance, free and reduced lunch. At McGovern and Whittier middle schools, 70% of the kids come from low-income families. Look at these beautiful faces, these beautiful kids. Such a happy day touring USD. Along with high poverty, we're also an immigrant welcoming community. More than 40% of the students in our school district are minorities, and in just a few years, the Sioux Falls School District will be a majority minority school district. I celebrate that fact. But there's challenges that come with it. If you combine high poverty rates and high rates of diversity, you have a school district with big issues that need to be addressed. It's no surprise that education isn't equitable. Education isn't equitable. Huge disparities between a student who is white and comes from a middle-income family and a student who is black or Hispanic and comes from a low-income family. If you're middle-income and white, it's highly likely that you were read to extensively as a child and you had all the books you wanted. You not only had enriched experiences across Sioux Falls, but your family vacations created so much more. You were involved in organized sports, arts, dance, other activities since you were very young, and you went to preschool. The vast majority of low-income kids, and especially immigrant kids, likely weren't read to in English or read to at all before they show up for kindergarten. They have not achieved that level of vocabulary that's required to be at grade level. They didn't take family vacations. They didn't have enriched experiences. They couldn't afford organized sports or the transportation to get them there. And they didn't go to preschool. These are the kids that show up to kindergarten way behind. They are not at the same level as other kids in the district. They're not going to test on par. They're going to struggle. They need our help. These are the kids that are experiencing the inequities in education. I call it the poverty disadvantage. It's exactly why we started the Promising Futures Fund. Bringing equity to their education and giving them enriched experiences are our top priorities. The Promising Futures Fund is only 4 years old, but we now support 20 schools with high rates of poverty here in Sioux Falls. We have $1 million budget, and we're rocking some boats. We've worked well with the principals in our schools to create programs they're asking for, to dramatically support reading first and foremost, create opportunities to give kids of all ages great learning experiences, creating new pathways to higher education and technical schools, and more importantly than anything else, to reinforce to these kids, these great kids, that if they set their minds to it, they can grow up and be anything they want. I was given that chance myself. Every kid deserves it. Every one of you should demand it too. Every person in this room has a chance to use your voice to help others, to fix an injustice, and do something important. You got to stop being afraid that you might piss someone off. You got to stop making excuses. We live in a screwed up world, and you all know it. Never has our country been so polarized. Never have there been so many issues that we need to address. Never has there been a time when your voice is needed more than it is today. Thank you.